Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture, and it's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. Alright, yes, I'm very relieved it's a cooldown week. But look, in the era of the album bomb, and with Logic and Lil Wayne set to do some stupid numbers for next week, it's really not that much of a consolation that I get a breather here, especially if it comes at the expense of any analysis or predictions beyond, well, Lil Wayne's got a shot for a few top 10 debuts, maybe even a shot for number 1, we'll see. And even then, if you take a look at our top 10, that should not be all that surprising, because while Girls Like You by Maroon 5 featuring Cardi B is holding it number 1, it's a weak number 1, as I've said before. Held back on sales, weak on streaming, and wavering on top of the radio. Hell, if it wasn't for Lil Wayne, I'd say that Lucid Dreams by Juice WRLD, currently at number 2, it would have a shot here, with massive streaming and more radio traction than I would otherwise expect. And right behind it is Better Now by Post Malone at number 3, with better sales making up for weak streaming and how radio is currently tipping into a nosedive. Still more than enough to keep it above In My Feelings by Drake down at number 4. Yeah, streaming is still good, but the radio losses are gross and will keep it falling fast. Now, what caught me a little off guard was the continued success of Kill Shot by Eminem, only dropping down to number 5 as it's being propped up by sales and incredibly huge YouTube. I still don't really expect this to last much longer, but it did surprise me it kept in the top 10 for another week. What rebounded considerably was Sicko Mode by Travis Scott, up to number 6, mostly thanks to streaming and consistent on-demand traction, and again, the video still hasn't dropped yet. This could still get even higher. Held up over I Like It by Cardi B featuring Bad Bunny and J Balvin down to number 7, but you could have predicted that thanks to how it's bleeding in all categories, except bizarrely sales, where it holds a little bit more steady. Kept it above Fifi by 6ix9ine featuring Nicki Minaj and Murda Beats at number 8, which pretty much just has streaming at this point. And yet, unless Lil Wayne seriously disrupts it next week, it'll hold up regardless thanks to all the YouTube it still gets. Hell, held up over I Love It by Lil Pump and Kanye West down to number 9, which is also only on streaming, but the margins there are too slim to keep it above other categories. Finally, clinging on to number 10 thanks to the radio and sales, we've got Youngblood by 5 Seconds of Summer. And even with that, I question how long that good radio momentum will last, because that's really all it has. And on that topic, are losers and dropouts. The only big one of the latter category is Mercy by Brett Young, just on the cusp of missing the year-end list for 2018. It's on the margins, we'll see. And when we flip over to the losers, somehow Ape Shit by the Carters is in the same boat, down at 97. Now the rest of our losers, they follow it as expected, especially for Eminem with Lucky You with Joyner Lucas stumbling to 28, Fall dropping down to 73, and The Ringer slipping down to 95. And for good measure, Rap Devil by Machine Gun Kelly also slid down to number 40. And outside of Better by Khalid losing off the debut to 57, and Remind Me to Forget by Kygo and Miguel losing traction to 93, the rest of our losers, they follow on from last week. Barbie Dreams by Nicki Minaj continues to sputter down to 70, Hooked by Dylan Scott fell to 79, and Self Care by the late Mac Miller dropped hard to 90. And thus we have to move on to our returning entries and gains, and honestly, I'm questioning the point of even covering these, as the concurrent album bombs coming next week will likely nuke them from orbit. There is no way the one return Vena Loca by Ozuna and Manuel Turizo at 100 will last into next week. And since so many of the gains here are heavily dependent upon streaming, I can see a lot of these positions in jeopardy. And as such, while we have big gains for debuts like Falling Down by Lil Peep and XXXTentacion to 13, New Patek by Lil Uzi Vert up to 24, Leave Me Alone by Flip De Niro at 81, and Notice by Lil Moosey down to 83, I don't really see any of these lasting. Really, the only one I see sticking around is Best Shot by Jimmy Allen at 86, and that's only thanks to the buffer of country radio right now. And really, radio and sales will be the saving grace for songs like Lie by NF up to 62, High Hopes by Panic at the Disco to 46, You Say by Lauren Daigle at 53, Speechless by Dan Shay up to 77, and Happier by Marshmello and Bastille to 15, even if you don't want it to be, and even then, they will likely lose some positions regardless. The only song I'm skeptical about here is Mo Bamba by Sheck West continuing to rise up to 31 on streaming, but only because it might just have the momentum to hold out. Not sure just yet. But on to our new arrivals, And since we've only got 5 this week, I think it's time we bring back an old tradition to this channel, something I don't think I've done in months now, where I venture around the world for something that could have been a hit somewhere else that likely deserves at least a little more shine in the United States. And this time, well, it's tricky because the big worldwide smash isn't exactly a great song, even if I think it does provide a little bit more conversation. Alright, screw it, let's talk about this anyway. Losing all my innocence, yeah, body on my, finding all my innocence, yeah, body on my, losing all my innocence, yeah, body on my, finding all my innocence, yeah. Backstory here. Loud Luxury is a Canadian DJ duo who got a bit of hype thanks to a Martin Garrix remix last year, and this is their first breakthrough single featuring Brando on lead vocals. And I want to stress how huge this song has been. It's been a top 10 hit around the world and a top 5 hit in Canada and the UK. This is pretty big and also distinctively Canadian, which isn't common for worldwide hits that are not coming from Drake. But the lyrics are arguably the diciest element on the song. The girl has clearly been going through this guy's friend group and he wants to hook up with her now, but she's more interested in the scene in Toronto in an oddly capricious way. And when you consider how much our protagonist is trying to grind his innocence away and Brando's slightly more soulful delivery, which is a bit of a weird pairing, the guy doesn't exactly read as all that sympathetic either. If anything, he feels just as flaky, which would make this song kind of tough to appreciate considering neither all that likable, except for the acknowledgement that this entire song does fit a very specific King Street, West Toronto nightclub sort of vibe. If you're in Toronto, you know. But really, if I'm gonna go back to this, it comes to the production. The blurry keys against the sandy snaps, and then for the drop off the snares, the synth tones pick up this roiling, low-end, honking tone that's got a surprising amount of groove to it. Honestly reminds me of Nicki Minaj's Pound the Alarm in a bizarre way, and I kind of like it in a similar lane. So yeah, it's definitely a flawed song, an acquired taste, and one I can definitely see a lot of folks who aren't familiar with the vibe kind of dismissing it, but in a strange way, it works for me. I'll take it. But now on to our list of new arrivals, unfortunately starting off with number 96, Rich by Maren Morris.
I'd be rich.
I'm not even surprised that this is charting, because what else is a woman supposed to do to get country airplay these days other than make a pop song? This was the worst song off of Maren Morris's debut album, and 2 years, they have not improved it. And I can see why some might still give it a pass. The lumpy guitars and bass actually have some actual tune, and Maren Morris has attitude, but beyond it, it's a smarmy kiss-off for all the times that she's gone back to this guy and then gotten dumped again and again, and the hook is stuffed with about as many non-country brand names as you'll see in your average trap song. It's just clunky and obnoxious in a really clumsy way, and the central sentiment doesn't even work that well, because if you were getting money every time you dealt with this guy because you want to be rich, you've got the incentive to never stop, so there's no drama. And considering the alternative scenario is not even brought up in the track, it just feels grasping and really undercooked. So yeah, not a good song, still not a fan. Next, number 92, Backin' It Up by Pardison Fontaine featuring Cardi B.
You know how to go and get a bag, don't you? You know how to make a bitch mad, don't you? Make your ex wanna get it back, that's a fact. Say it louder for the bitches in the back, ayy.
Look, the only reason this song is on the Hot 100 is because of Cardi B, plain and simple. Like with most new hip-hop artists, I haven't heard a shred of buzz before he notched a hit, and his back catalog is actually pretty scant. Or at least I would have said that before yesterday, where Kanye West tweeted that Pardison Fontaine wrote the vast majority of the song Violent Crimes, the final song off his album Ye. Now, the ghostwriting admission doesn't exactly surprise me. Kanye West has been very open about how much he writes his verses, if at all, and even if Violent Crimes is intended as more intimate, it does punch a nice little hole in Kanye's ream of excuses around the writing on that album. But even now, the ghostwriter has a hit of his own with Cardi B, and it's not bad. Pardison Fontaine has a surprising amount of vocal personality and presence, and his bars actually connect together, although his talk of saran wrapping the pussy instead of using a condom raises all sorts of questions. And then Cardi B shows up with a few solid punchlines and a decent hook. Overall, it's solid, although I do think that the blocky bass, the standard trap beat, and the very minimalistic melody don't exactly stand out all that much. If something holds this song back, it will be the production, so decent track, but not all that memorable. Not great. Number 74, This Feeling by the Chainsmokers featuring Kelsea Ballerini. Alright, look, there's a part of me that can't blame Kelsea Ballerini for this. Country radio is not playing women, she's always had a foot in pop, so why not collaborate? Of course, the issue is that she's working with the Chainsmokers, who have been having a miserable 2018. And it's not like this trap-inflected, blurry tune does much to elevate any of them, especially as Kelsea Ballerini doesn't even have any writing credits on this, and the drop is a squonky, pitch-shifted non-replacement for a decent hook. Yeah, the acoustic guitar sounds alright, and the lyrics, they're not bad. Basically a song where love overrules the reason of their friends telling them it's a bad idea, although it's very telling how quickly Andrew Taggart mentioned this on his verse that he can see an end in their situation, but the truth is, there's just not much beyond that. The Chainsmokers have made worse music in 2018, sure, but the fact that Kelsea Ballerini has to dip down to this, especially as she tries to harmonize on this song and gets no help, yeah, she's better than this. And this is only passable, at best. Number 64, Head Above Water by Avril Lavigne.
As I fall down to my knees, don't let me drown, drown, drown. Don't let me drown.
So alright, Avril Lavigne's coming out with a new album, apparently intended for this year, and am I the only one who's actively questioning where she would fit in modern pop? Because I don't expect her to make another stab at pop rock or pop punk. She's older, and outside of the indie scene, that sound is long gone, more's the pity. So we get a piano ballad with big strings embellishments about her struggles with Lyme disease over the past few years, and honestly, I wish I liked this song a little bit more. Yes, I'll freely admit that her more conventional pop material has never interested me as much as her rock or punk stuff, but this is a song that almost seems to be taking steps towards Christian rock territory with the frequent invocations of God and getting saved on the hook. Which, to Avril Lavigne's credit, she can still sell this. She's always been an underrated and very charismatic vocalist, and she still has enough of an edge in her composition to pump up this song. She still sounds like Avril Lavigne, but whenever I was expecting the heavier elements on the hook to really drive it home, they kept sputtering out in a really wonky way, and the lack of greater lyrical detail just does not get there as well as her earlier work. Again, I want to like this song. I want to see Avril Lavigne make a comeback, but in a pop era where we have songs like Kesha's Praying, this does not quite measure up. It's still a good song though, so if you're curious, check it out. And finally, number 47, No Stylist by French Montana featuring Drake.
Diamonds on my neck, frozen tears. Hopping out the jet, leers. Bad bitches getting wet here. Yes, don't call me till the checks clear.
So it's funny, I've mentioned before that I've been watching the Joe Budden podcast a fair bit, and he's expressed some amusement that when Drake gets together with French Montana, the verses Drake unleashes tend to be pretty petty, or at the very least pointed at somebody else. Only slightly ironic, because when Drake teamed up with French Montana on No Shoppin', he was allegedly dissing Joe Budden. So alright, this appears to be something of a sequel in its structure, and yeah, kind of a letdown here. Yeah, the guitars behind the leaden trap beat and the sharp hi-hat skitters, they sound alright, and French Montana is doing his generic brand name flexing and really biting of Travis Scott style, but the verse from Drake, all we've got is one subliminal shot about how he doesn't want the girls wearing Kanye West associated sneaker brand at Adidas. That's it. The rest is pretty generic bragging, which leaves the song about as hollow as any other French Montana track. It's not bad, but again, not really memorable either. Don't expect it to stick around. So yeah, not really a lot to praise or say about this week. I guess I'll give best of the week to Avril Lavigne and Head Above Water, but even then it's more decent than great, and I can't really see myself going back to it much. Worst? Yeah, Rich by Maren Morris, and even then it's not so much bad as it is just grating on my nerves as a complete squandering of potential. But next week, Logic, Lil Wayne, and a lot of both of them. Stay tuned for that, but until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown on Spectrum Pulse. And I'll see you next time.